I've reviewed the Treasury Department watchdog's report, and the misconduct that it uncovered is inexcusable. It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I am angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS, given the power that it has and the reach that it has in all of our lives. And as I said earlier, it should not matter what political stripe you're from. The fact of the matter is that the IRS has to operate with absolute integrity. The government generally has to conduct itself in a way that is true to the public trust. That's especially true for the IRS.
Miller didn't resign, he was fired. The president said that Jack Lew, the Treasury Secretary, asked for his resignation. What's a little strange about this is that Miller had nothing to do with this, as best we know. He's the acting commissioner. The misconduct, and it's absolutely misconduct. It's no different than stopping young men on the street based on the color of their skin, as we know is going on a lot in New York City. It took place under the watch of Douglas Shulman, who was an appointee of President George W. Bush, which shows how complicated this story is. The person still working at the IRS who has not been fired and has not resigned is Lois Lerner. She was the person in charge of exempt organizations, that is, organizations that don't pay taxes. And she misled reporters, to be polite, last Friday. It's not the first time reporters have found her to make false statements to them. And members of Congress say that she lied to them. I do not understand why she is still on the taxpayers' payroll.
And David K. Johnston, this whole issue of the IRS, every several years there's a new upsurge of complaints about the IRS and its role in American society. Could you talk about some of the real scandal that you see is going on with the IRS?
Sure. The Internal Revenue Service has been given all of these duties that are beyond collecting taxes, and they have enormously added to their burdens. So in the last 10 years, the budget of the IRS, adjusted for the size of the population and inflation, has come down 17%. Well, the duties it's been given have gone like this. Now, if you're a wage earner or a pensioner, you have your taxes taken out of your money before you collect it. You're not being affected by these budget cuts. But people trying to get a tax-exempt status, there aren't enough people to process the complaint, to process the permit requests. People are not being audited at the level they should, who are very wealthy and who self-report. There is no independent verification of their income, and we know that self-reported income, roughly a third of it, tends not to be reported overall. Some people are scrupulous, some people are the exact opposite, and that verified income, like wages, 99.9% of that gets reported to the government. So the IRS is being asked to do things it doesn't have the budget to do. Its workers have not had pay raises in 3 years. IRS employees are held to a higher standard than anybody else in the government in terms of their conduct. And they simply cannot do all the things that Congress is asking of them.
Attorney General Eric Holder appeared before the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. Republican Congressmember Lamar Smith of Texas asked what laws may have been broken if the IRS targeted groups for their conservative views. This was Holder's response.
I think it was Congressman Scott, I think, really put his finger on it. There are potential civil rights.
Right. But do you know of any criminal laws that might have been violated? This is
I'm talking about criminal case,
okay.
criminal violations in the civil rights statutes, IRS, that I think we find there. There's also the possibility of 1,001 false statements, violations that might have been made, given,
right.
Given at least what I know at this point.
Okay, I think some of the criminal laws that might have been violated, 18 United States Code 242 makes it a crime to deprive any person of rights, privileges, or immunities guaranteed by the Constitution. 18 United States Code 1346 makes it a crime for government employees to deprive taxpayers of their honest services. So that's a couple of examples.
David K. Johnston, your response.
Well, it's very hard to imagine that there's a criminal case here. The IRS agents in Cincinnati, the examiners in what's called the determination unit, were presented with an irresolvable conflict. The law for what are called 501c4 organizations, which dates to 1913, says that they are exclusively to be engaged in social welfare. But an IRS regulation that's been around since 1959 invokes the word primarily. And groups like Move On, which is a 501c4, although it does not appear to be in the classic meaning a social betterment group. They're not promoting more wildflowers in the parks and Little League and Girl Scouts and things like that. They are a 501c4. Karl Rove's organization spent, based on its tax filings, less than 0.1% of its 2011 revenue on social welfare. So it's hard to, the IRS agents have this problem of what do I do with these organizations? They picked 300 of them for close scrutiny. 75 of them said Tea Party or Patriot or Glenn Beck's 9/11, things like that. And they selected them. They shouldn't have done it on that basis. But the applications those groups made, because some of them have made public their responses, so we know what their applications said, those applications were drafted in a way that basically said, I'm really not a social welfare organization. So of course they came under scrutiny. They just shouldn't have been picked the way they were. Can't see a criminal case in that.
And there was no group that was actually denied its 501c4 status, right, of those groups that were reviewed?
That's right. And furthermore, one, you don't have to get a permit from the IRS. You do not need a determination. The law allows, it's right on the IRS website, that you can simply self-declare that you are a 501c4 organization. So no organization was prevented from participating in political activity because of the actions of this unit. All that happened is they didn't have a letter certifying that there was no question that they were a 501c4 organization. And that's a very important distinction that's being lost here, and I haven't seen it in any of the news reports.